Okay, so today I'm on the air with JJ Skinner um, to discuss politics, capitalism, all the general topics that I like to discuss on this sort of thing I do. JJ, as I understand, is a right-wing person. So yeah,
Uh,
just
mo-
gonna be sorry.
I'm actually more of a centrist now, considering my views have changed.
Okay, well, centrist. Um, but yeah, no, it's interesting to hear a opinion from a differing side, I suppose. So JJ, where do you wish to start?
Wherever you'd like to start, man.
All right, well, we'll start with an easy sort of topic. Um, Capitalism, I suppose, would be the ideal place to begin. What are your thoughts on it, on the state of it at the moment?
Honestly, honestly, I think it's the best option out of all of them, but there are some kinks that need to be worked out, at least in the, U.S. government. But other than that, I think it's probably the better out of everything.
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm going to disagree with some of that, but just as a start, where do you think the focus should be for working things out? Like you say, there's problems with the U.S. government. Um, where
I
would you
just, uh,
say?
I just believe that in some businesses they care more about the business than the actual people, and they need to focus a little more on the people and focus on their well-being. But
Like
there's only so
which?
much you can do.
Yeah. Like which businesses though? Like what sort of sectors of society are you talking about here?
Yeah, like they need to have like a set diagram of like the the product's safe and is good for the consumer.
Um, so like regulation and stuff, and quality checks and environmental checks and stuff.
Yeah, just not too far like where it starts, going against like the Constitution and people's rights.
Yeah. And going back to a second ago, you said in some sections of society or some areas of government and stuff, it's not being met. Do you have a like more do you have a region where this you want to focus on, like with what sort of products
No,
and stuff, or just in general?
mm, just in general.
Okay, so my question to you then is, if I was a person in charge of one of these businesses making money from missing out on these regulations, why would I, as a capitalist, be in favor of regulating this section? Why'd I be in favor of making my products more environmentally friendly when I make more money saving it and thus not caring about the environmental consequences of my actions?
I just feel like the environment is very important because
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
it's all yeah,
But
it's
if
all
you're
around us. So we need to make sure it's good for the next,
absolutely,
generation and isn't just a cesspool.
absolutely, no, I completely agree with that. But if you're the capitalist who's making money from, say, dumping their waste products anywhere, or not using ethically sound, methods to create their products, why would I? If I'm that capitalist making money from that, who is anyone to tell me in a free market, oh, cut your profits to help the world? When I'm saying no, capitalism is the commodification of life to accrue capital. The idea you can extract profits from anything because you're in a unregulated free market. So who is anyone to say, well, this encroaches on your grounds? If that
Kind of
makes
hard
sense.
to explain that sort of thing from my point because
But no, it's. Do you understand what I'm trying to say though? It's a thought experiment. I mean, why should a under this? You say capitalism is the best thing, and you support capitalism, but the regulations you want to put in place are completely opposed to the ideals of capitalism. Like, why would a capitalist in this wealthy position of being able to own this company support the idea of curtailing their profits for the benefit of everyone? That's not like free market capitalism. That's not each to their own profits for anything else. Accrue capital to make capital. That's not in line with that at all. So why would
mm,
this system you know adhere to what you're saying? I mean, it's very true. The environment is important, but under capitalism, why should capitalists go along with it.
Mm. It's kind of hard for me to explain because, first of all, I was busy all night, so my information is kind of, all over the place, and it's kind of hard to explain some things from my point of view.
It's fine. You've got time here. And I'm not going to be like asking you for a proper like thesis or anything, but I just want you to consider that there's more capitalism like as a system affects all elements of life. It's like you can just take parts of it and say, oh, we like this bit, so we don't like this bit. It's an all-encompassing thing. So, like I was saying, if you imagine a company that's in ownership of oil fields or of fossil fuel resources and stuff.
And S-Man, yes, I do know that unions exist. That's what I like about unions.
But anyway, yeah. If you imagine companies in possession of fossil fuels and land with oil and stuff, under capitalism, it's in their complete right to use that land however they want, and absolutely, companies are going to be profiting off it to improve their position, to abide by the rules of capitalism, to improve their social position. And it doesn't matter what happens to the rest of the planet because of that. Their own situation has been bettered. So as by the thesis and logic of capitalism, what are you sort of expecting? And so for it's quite right for you to say, oh, the environment is important and we need to be making sure we're not destroying the planet. But you then support a system that doesn't reflect that, because the system you support very literally puts your own profits and your own capital above all else. So do you see the contradiction of sorts?
I can see that, but I believe in some things, in some ways, that capitalism does do that, but sometimes you have to make sacrifices, like cut down a few trees rather than a whole forest.
But that doesn't make sense though, because you said a second ago, for one, that you don't want to be making the world a cesspool. You don't want to be destroying the planet we live on, which is quite correct. We don't want to be ravaging the planet. And then you say, oh, we have to make a few sacrifices, but that firstly, the sacrifices are, it's not like you're just destroying a tiny little bit of land. The amount of rainforest or natural resource lost daily is colossal. But that's in line with capitalism. That's in line with the idea that anything is a commodity to be profited off. For all you can
with
say,
this, it's
sorry,
just things get a little too complicated, and things just get a little too complicated. And it's hard for me to explain certain things.
It's I understand that, but you look at the state of the world today with the ecological crisis we've got on our hands, the rising sea levels, the massive deforestation across the globe, the destruction of the polar ice caps, and you look at all this, and clearly we need radical change. But under this current system, where we place profits and capital above all else, where we consider private property of corporations as their right to do what they want, even if they're destroying the natural world around us. We need a system that reflects and changes that, and that system is not going to come from capitalism. Like, it's not like it's just a few things have changed, your garden doesn't look as nice. It's, if we don't do something, we're going to have cataclysmic food shortages. We're going to have massive habitat destruction. We're going to have rising sea levels, like the countries completely submerged by the sea, which isn't, that's not exaggeration. There are countries that are low-lying enough to be completely eradicated by climate change and by rising sea levels. Look at what's going to happen in a few decades' time with our water situation and our food situation. If we don't make serious changes, we're going to be in a dire situation. And we have the means to change things, but our current system, places power and resources into the hands of a few people, and thus they are able to continually destroy the environment, make money whilst doing so, and not face any of the consequences. So again, I ask you to sort of consider why you support a system that's enabling the destruction of the planet, really.
Yeah, when it comes to this, I'm not really the most experienced. I think S-Man has more experience when it comes to this than I do, considering I just recently got into this whole political
of
sphere
course,
and
but
economic sphere.
Yeah, but you can still sort of see. It's not like I'm trying to lie to you or anything. You can still sort
I
of
do see
see.
that there are faults in capitalism, but I do believe that in some ways the good outweighs the bad, but there's things that still need to change.
But I'm asking you to consider that, like, what good is there from the situation you described? You yourself said that one of the major sticking points of it was the impact it's had on the environment. Um, and that's a pretty major thing. Like the planet we live on is in environmental ecological crisis because of our refusal to move beyond a system that places profiting off the land and profiting off the resources of the land as a more important thing than the actual welfare of the land and those who live on it. um so it's not like you got to think about what is being said. Like, it's no one's asking you to become a political expert. You just got to think rationally and logically about a system that actively, in its whole justification for its existence, commodifies the world around us.
Mm.
But do you understand what I'm saying?
I do understand what you're saying.
Exactly. So can you see that where I'm coming from is not a place of mockery or trying to catch you out or anything. It's trying to raise a genuine point about the fragile nature capitalism is leaving our planet in.
I don't really. I understand where you're coming from. I really do, but I don't believe it's the ideology's fault. I believe it's the certain people that are in charge's fault. Like they put their own means over the good of other people. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. That I know what you believe. Socialism and communism, help the people. But I believe when it comes to that kind of stuff, sometimes it's a dog eat dog world. Sometimes you have to worry about yourself more than other people, but you can sometimes spare certain things for people to help them out.
But that doesn't really make sense though, because for instance, you say, oh, there's bad people, it's not the whole system's fault. But you got to ask, why are people driven to do this in the first place? People aren't just born with the idea to destroy the world. It's like it's a cartoon. It's people, just normal people like you and I are just in the position to exploit the land, to commodify natural resources, and justify it by looking at the system itself and saying, well, this is how life works. We got to keep making money. We got to disregard the welfare of the planet because it's capitalism, and we need to focus on ourselves. It's not like as people who genuinely like just enjoy destroying stuff. Like, it comes from a system that they're grown up around it and stuff. And for even on a basic level, it's not like looking out for yourself means you have to destroy the planet to look after yourself. And I think we'd be going on to a slightly different topic, like from the one we're just initially on, if we start talking about
Yeah.
socialism and stuff. But if if you want to like consider just stopping the current trend of environmental devastation we're in, we've got to move beyond the idea that the planet is just anyone's to carve up. We've got to think about what's best for everyone because we all live on the same planet, and it's more logical and more sensible to plan a future for everybody's needs, than just leaving it up to a free market and saying, oh well, the wealthiest people get to decide, like we do today, and what has led to the current ecological disaster we're on the verge on, and we're already going through it. If you consider how disruptive the storm cycle has been, and the rising sea levels and stuff.
Yes, I do understand, but I believe if we expose those companies that are, doing those certain tactics that are just, destroying this planet, hopefully the people will choose to avoid those kinds of companies. So, greener, healthier, companies can pop up and at least make this world better.
But how would you how would you like go about exposing said companies? I mean, it's quite in public record that many of these companies are pretty damaging. But when you consider the wealth and stature of these organizations, when you consider the fact that they have multi-billion financial empires across the globe, and control far more of produce than perhaps you may think, how would you possibly go about removing them without considering major change to the system itself? It's like, for instance, look at Amazon, a company which is hardly ethically sound. It's got some pretty atrocious treatment of workers and environmental legacy across the globe and stuff. But it owns what, 20%, I think, of groceries and food produce in America, which means it controls 1/5 of production of a major industry like food. Look at transportation. Look at the stature of certain companies which are able to dominate and influence the market. It's not like it's just an individual business where you can just say, no, you're bad, let's take our money elsewhere. It's multinational corporations, and it's hardly as though you'd be doing it with a lone company. If you were going to boycott companies which had poor environmental practices, that's practically your entire market gone, because it turns out under capitalism all corporations are participating in these poor practices. They're leaving poor legacies behind in third world countries. They're using massive amounts of fossil fuels to transport their goods across the globe. Every company is in the same system, trying to save money, trying to maintain their profit over all else, because ultimately that's what the system is about. That's what the that's what the nature of capitalism is: saving profit, making profits, and making capital and accruing capital to benefit yourself and the rest of the world be damned. Ultimately, you got to consider that it goes beyond just individual companies and individual things, and just the individual choices, but it's a systemic problem. And again, I would ask you, how would you possibly expose and move beyond an entire system built around this, damaging the planet to benefit yourself?
I get what you're talking about. The few, bad companies can spoil the whole bunch and that sort of thing. But I believe it's easier to, and much more, better to have faith in the certain people to take their money elsewhere, because that's what free market. They can take their money to a different company that's more ethical and more, more of a more good for the environment, rather than change your whole, whole way of how the country works and your whole economic system. Because changing an economic system, you can't just do it right away. It takes time. Same with same with certain companies going bankrupt because of their bad ethics. But I believe, getting rid of those bad companies, it takes shorter amount of time than does to change a whole economic system.
Okay, so a few things. Firstly, you said a few bad eggs can spoil the whole bunch. And I mean, firstly, that's not quite true. I mean, every company is looking to cut corners somewhere. But secondly, you've got to remember, like you said, it's a free market. So it doesn't necessarily matter that it starts out with just one company. That company, if they're able to save money and make more profits by just not disregarding the health, safety, and environmental concerns, they're making more money, they're making more capital, they're a more powerful company, and they can push their other competitors out of business, which is why the largest companies are so dominant, because they're in a position where there isn't anyone who's in a position to make them change their attitudes and stuff, because they're the wealthiest around. No one can afford to own the capital that they do. So if other companies stop disregarding the environment, suddenly they're making less money and they're less powerful than their competitors. And obviously, in capitalism, you need to be continuously growing, and you need to be continuously maintaining that power at the top. So it's not as though you can just say, oh, it's a few bad people making it bad for everyone. It's an entire system of badness. Secondly, you said you got to have faith in people to take their money elsewhere. I mean, firstly, like I've already said, it's not like it's just isolated in a few companies. It's everywhere. And maybe some companies don't do one environmentally poor thing, but then elsewhere they'll do something else questionable. The company that's wasting millions in like millions in one area in terms of resource mismanagement is perhaps doing something bad elsewhere. It's colossally flawed on all levels. And again, do you think it's not a good system if you're having to rely on essentially what amounts to chance and the goodwill of people in a system that's already pretty much fundamentally flawed to stop the environment from eroding? That's not up to anyone but the people in charge of the random decisions that are causing the environmental damage. And I think the most galling thing you said was that these things take time, which is technically correct. It does, things do take time. But the point is, we don't have time. We're on the verge and already going through an ecological disaster. I mean, you only got to look at how dire the future is going to be if we don't make changes, because of the fact that we don't have enough of these resources we're currently using to continuously produce in the way we're doing. The food wastage, the water wastage, the amount of waste our society produces needlessly, the ecological damage we're doing to the planet. We don't have the time to just cross our fingers and hope things get better, because we live in a system where things getting better is in the direct opposition to the needs and want of the corporation. Do you understand? Like, it's not like it's just we can just cross our fingers and replay the event and stuff and do simulations. We only have one Earth, and if we mess up, we're going to have permanent environmental damages to the planet. So it's not good enough to say it just takes time and we just got to hope the free market does its work. It's not worked at all, because look at the ecological mess we're in now.
I do understand where you're coming from, but when it comes to like capitalism, socialism, communism, and all the other economics, there are goods and bads to every single economic system. And when it comes to capitalism, I believe some of the good overwhelms the bad. Even though a company may do one bad thing in a certain area, they do good things in other certain areas. So it's more of an ethically, good company, even though it may screw up, because there is human error. People are going to make mistakes. And I just believe that with every bad, there may be 5 or 6 good things. And sometimes you got to, pick certain things without, and
okay, so
go with an economic system that's more good than bad.
I mean, obviously, you would say all that, but even if that was all true, at the start of this debate, you said that we can't let the world slide into a cesspool. So surely, all these potential good things you're talking about are, massively outweighed by the fact that the bad is literally destroying the planet. But moving on to the idea that corporations are doing good, I would fundamentally and completely disagree. It's the labor of workers, the producers, the products we use and the stuff we have in the world and the ideas, and it's capitalism that misappropriates the value of the labor onto the capitalists and the bosses instead of the workers. So, for instance, to produce the computer or laptop or whatever that we're having this conversation over, you got the workers of all over the world collecting the materials to make the laptop and shipping it across to the US or the UK, and having an internet router and all the stuff we need to have this conversation. That requires the labor of loads of people across the globe. Yet it's only a few people at the companies who own the means of production that get to have the profits and wealth from the labor. Meanwhile, the workers in Africa, where not South Africa, Southern Africa, where they got the silicon and stuff from, they what are they seeing from their labor? Nothing. They're kept in dismal conditions, while people in the West make millions of their labor. What are the ship workers who are crucial for getting these goods to the rest of the world? What are they getting for their labor? Nothing, because they've been treated as nothing more than a cog in the machine of capitalism, just used until there's a better cog and then replaced and left to rot, basically, which is why so many industrial cities are in decay in the West, because of the fact that capitalism does not care for people. It's just about profits. And as soon as someone can be more profitable for you, The other one's just left to rot. What of the the people who sold the computer to you? They're only valuable in such as they just act as a mediator between company and person. But then when a machine can do it, they're just left to rot. And under a better system than capitalism, it would be a great thing to have machines doing our jobs for us, because all of a sudden, hey, you don't have to work all the time. You don't have to be out at awful hours just doing physical labor. But instead, it's a potential disaster, because you're going to have thousands of people out of a job with no alternative, because a machine can do their job 10 times faster and cheaper and more efficiently, basically. um, so to bring that sort of diatribe to a conclusion, really, or my little what I was saying here, you got to consider that not only is capitalism it's not producing a world which is at all fair. It's stealing the value of labor from those who created that labor. It's not productive. It's essentially allowed power to be concentrated by those at the top tier. I know I'm sort of saying a lot, so I'll let you come in now. But yeah, just fundamentally disagree with the idea that corporations have done good for the world when it's abundantly clear that they haven't.
Well, when it comes to like that sort of stuff, there are certain regulations that a company has to follow in order for it to, stay in business. Otherwise, the government will have to step in and, fix it, because
The thing
certain
is, sorry, no,
people
you
in
go ahead.
certain positions may not be ethically correct. So the government has to like step in to keep them in check, so that you know the heads don't do something really drastic that's going to absolutely screw everything up.
I mean, firstly, regulations certainly in America, but even in the UK, are pretty lackadaisical. I mean, we still have the theft of labor value we see under capitalism. Capitalism in itself is based around theft. The idea that labor is a commodity to be profited of, and that a capitalist, a boss, can take the value of the labor, seize most of it for themselves, and hand back those who did the work next to nothing. But moving on to the actual topic you were saying about regulations, I mean, you only have to look at the state of certain industries in capitalist, quite deregulated America, to see just how poor a situation you have. You've got to look at the lack of standards on food and on water, notably, the situation in Flint, where they've not had clean water for 4 years now, I think, because of the lack of regulations they have there. Look at the situation with chickens in America, where they're essentially like these terrible quality corpses, basically, filled with chemicals and just really unhealthy stuff to be consuming. Yeah, why does it happen? Because it's a deregulated situation. And yeah, you can say, oh well, we can have regulations, but how is that going to get through how is that going to appeal to the capitalist system? Like, you're essentially asking people, oh, curtail your profits to make things better for everyone else. That's not capitalism. That's not making profit and letting people profit off commodities and stuff. How would you get that into a government under capitalism where it adheres to the free market and stuff? That's not going to happen. And even if you do get those regulations through, as we've seen across the last few decades, companies just move their factories to third world nations, and the cheap economies that are at the lower end of the pecking order, where they need or where their governments even are happy to accept the factories and stuff from the corporations, because hey, they provide cheap boosts to the economy and they allow them to concentrate power. And hence you see the factories in Southeast Asia or the mines in Africa happily used by corporations from the West to make extraordinary profits from the backs of cheap and often slave labor. To imply that you can just put a regulation on capitalism is completely ignorant of the actual conditions that both exist in capitalism and the actual ethos of the system itself. If you're telling people in a free market, oh, curtail this because it's good for everyone, they can, justifiably say no because it's a free market and I should be able to do as I wish. And fundamentally, that is capitalism. That is the system that you support, one where people have the quote unquote freedom to act as they wish unimpeded. And for anyone who's, for all the justification you have in saying, oh, the environment is quite important and we shouldn't be destroying it to make profit, someone else can say, oh, well, it's my profit and we stay wealthy if we, dump our waste in an ocean, or if we let our mines just have harmful chemicals in so that our workers die a lot. And yeah, I think what I'd like to focus on actually is the idea of regulating a system that is fundamentally about the lack of regulation, the lack of impediment on the free market.
Like I said, I'm not the most experienced in this sort of things, and S-Man is a lot more nuanced when it comes
We don't need to bring
to this
F1
kind of
into
thing.
it,
So,
though. Like it's just a thought experiment. Like imagine like if we can outline that capitalism is about free markets, about commodification of products and life, about private property. It's fundamentally about that freedom to extract profit from anything you can, and doing so without any blockade to achieve that. So how you rightfully say that there should be some sort of, you shouldn't just be able to go and do anything you like to the environment, but then you support a system which says the opposite of that, which says, but yeah, anything is a commodity, anything can be profited off. So do you see the sort of the contradiction here?
like I said, I'm not. It's hard for me to explain these sort of things. I'm not as nuanced as
But
other people are. So
you can try though. Like I'm not sure that it's something that's impossible.
it's just I've kind of ran into a wall, considering my thoughts are kind of all over the place at this moment when it comes to capitalism and all this other sort of stuff.
Well, do you at least see what I'm saying though? That there's an
I do
inherent
understand what you're saying. Yeah, I do.
but can you align yourself with it though? There's a contradiction between the idea that you need to have a regulated environmental stance and then a system that is fundamentally based on the lack of regulation and the lack of blockages between your ability to profit off commodities.
I just don't know about this.
You don't know about it, but you don't. I'm not asking you
No,
to.
I know about it. It's just I'm kind of running into like an intellectual wall.
But do you understand though, like what I'm saying though? Like corporate, like so. Imagine you've got the situation where you're in government and you're trying to say to government that, oh, we need to regulate our economy because corporations are destroying the environment. But we live under capitalism where profits rule above all else, where we've got a free market where money and capital, that's what matters. Someone can easily shout you down with, oh, well, if you do this, we're gonna make less profits. If you do this, that's impeding on our private property. We own this land, so who are you to tell us what to do on it? You know, it's more it's not like you can just say anything under capitalism and just have it work because it's a good idea. Good ideas do not matter next to profit. And if you are wealthy and you've got land and resources you want to exploit, capitalism values you over the concern that, say, someone might have over the environment. And it's the same with anything. It's like, on the one hand, it's, downright evil and despicable to be exploiting workers of the third world simply because you can just employ them for cheaper and essentially control them with, like, and essentially like a private army, basically, as we see in, many factories in Southeast Asia and developing Africa and stuff. But on the other hand, it makes the TNCs of the West millions. How much is Nike and Adidas worth because of their sweatshop factories in to the Tiger economies? How much do diamond sellers and retailers make from their control of mines in the in like the Congo and stuff? I don't know the exact country. Sorry, is there someone? Do I need to wait for you or something, JJ? Or you
I
there?
just, yeah, I'm still here. It's just, when it comes to this sort of subject, I've kind of ran into a wall at this moment. I can't think of anything to counteract it. I know I probably could, but I just can't think of anything at this moment.
You can come back to it later if you want and move on to a somewhat altered topic if you wish.
Yeah, that'd be fine for me.
All right. Well, you lead the conversation this time. Where do you want to head now? There's quite a few areas I'd imagined we disagree on.
Which one would you like to disagree on other than economics?
Well, I find it quite. I find capitalism to go just like beyond economics. It's quite all-encompassing. But in terms of stuff, I think actually, I'm not really sure, to be honest. Well, you said you ran into a wall with capitalism, so you lead it. Where's something you feel strongly about?
Um, what about socialist issues like feminism, that sort of thing? Would you mind if we went to a subject
Yeah,
somewhere
sure,
or on that?
sure. Um, well, essentially, I find it quite simple. There's stereotypes and ideals and ideas framed around the idea of patriarchal values, and it doesn't have to be as straight forward as women are directly inferior and should not be able to have rights and stuff. People aren't just going to outwardly say that, but when it comes to these subtle um, ideas of hierarchy and the way conversations about certain topics arise and the sexual and political and educational inequalities and just the entire plethora of areas around the topic of men and women and stuff and gender and stuff. You gotta realize that we need feminism. We need a movement to not only end the unfair situation women face, but also deconstruct the situation that men are placed in by this as well. Um, and I find social issues like feminism to be connected to it's all intersectional. It's all connected to destroying oppressive systems, be it the patriarchal values, be it capitalism, be it homophobia, racism, all those things. They're all connected. They're all based in hierarchical control, divide and rule power structures. And you got to destroy those power structures because they're not fair, basically, not right.
I do. The thing with the feminism is that things have changed over the years. More rights have been given to women. They have the right to vote. They have the right to other things. So I don't feel like feminism is necessarily needed. Now, sure, there is still sexism in this world. I am not going to say that there isn't sexism, racism, or any sort of thing in this world, but you can never really outright eliminate them 100%. You can, turn into like a small, minuscule amount, like it is getting to today with people becoming more open minded and more like minded when it comes to that sort of thing. But when it comes to uh, people's rights, you can only do so much without, infringing upon someone's rights and completely ruining society.
Um, well, sans the slightly hyperbolic ending to that little segment there. Do you think, though, the idea that equality and the end to oppressive structures is achieved just by giving someone the right to vote? In fact, do you think the fact that it had to be given to them and wasn't just a guarantee straight away shows that a structure is still in place? And additionally, it's like, would you say, you can't just say as soon as the right to vote is given, oh, sexism is eliminated. There's still those people who don't think women should have the right to vote. And fast forward to today, where it's less of people, like most people aren't going to say, oh yeah, women shouldn't be voting, but change the topic from that to say abortion, and all of a sudden loads of people think, oh well, women shouldn't be able to have abortions, and they have all these different fake terminology to justify their opposition to bodily autonomy, basically. And that's a major point of the government in America right now. For instance, Trump's administration actively trying to curtail the right to get an abortion for a woman and stuff. Look at the way women are expected to, stereotypically manage the home. Look at the unpaid labor that women face in the home by, raising the children, managing the household, expected to manage the home life of the man. If you go by, the patriarchal standards, and not receiving any pay for it. Essentially, there's so much more to sexism than just, oh, can they vote, can they work, and you got to realize that deconstructing these tropes and norms and stuff in society goes far beyond a few laws and the whims of the state. So really, feminism is never not going to be needed, whilst we still have these the plethora of problems that we see in society today. Just look at the stuff going on with women being harassed in the workplace and stuff, and women, just there's so much more to it than just basic civil liberties. It goes beyond what is confined and defined by the law, and the idea that people's freedom will be infringed by taking feminism too far, like, is just born of the idea that there's a limit to how far you can deconstruct an inequality, which is obviously not true. No one's saying that, oh, we just snap our fingers and no one's ever going to have a bad thought again. Of course not. You're not just going to erase centuries of stereotypes and power structures and stuff. But you got to start. You got to actually attempt to make the world fairer, and you got to do that by saying, yeah, there is stuff in this planet that is sexist. That is any sort of discrimination, and that's why feminism is still so important, because it's about deconstructing that structure, that oppressive system. Yeah.
That's what I believed it used to be, but now it's more of a group where women are, where most of the members, if not most, then a lot of the members believe that they are better than men and are inherently not equal.
That's just
they are better than them.
That just isn't true. Like, maybe it's true, like one of those tiny subset of people, but that's like a tiny little 10-member rubbishy group. Like, the vast majority of feminists don't think that. It'd be laughable to say that. And it's not like that. Just essentially comes from the sort of rabid stereotyping that feminism receives in some internet circles. In reality, like, feminists are just normal people who want to deconstruct the negative systems and beliefs in the world. So, for instance, the negative sexual implications women often face for either being or not being sexually active. The idea that sex workers are bad for being more open and more unstereotypically free with their sexual activity and stuff. The idea that a woman's asking for it, or has brought on her own assault or harassment if she dresses a certain way. The higher focus on a woman's appearance than on men's. That I can keep on just listing stuff that exists, because it's far more complicated than just, oh, can they vote, can they work, can they own a house. It's more complicated than that. And furthermore, the fact that you're saying, oh, they think that women are better than men, it's just it's laughable. It's the sort of thing that people joke about when they talk about how when you talk about the stereotypes of feminism, because it's just something that holds no basis in reality. Like, for every one person who thinks that, there's millions, if not billions, who can blatantly see that's not true.
I understand where you're coming from. I really do, but feminism is extremely flawed nowadays, where their ideologies have changed, their way of living or their way of saying certain things have completely altered to what to originally was, which was the right to vote. And I understand what you're saying, that giving them the right to vote, giving them the right to the house, yeah, that doesn't get rid of sexism. But as people have become more aware that women were treated like shit, and I mean absolute dog shit back in the days. So they are fixing that by giving them more and more rights, like the right to speech, the right to hold public office, to the right to do everything a man can do.
Yes, but it's not as simple as that. Is what I'm trying to say. Like, did you hear what all the stuff I was listing a second ago? Like, it goes beyond just giving them basic rights. It's like, imagine saying to a black person, the second the civil rights bill was passed, saying, "Oh, you're equal now. It's fine. There's no more racism." Like, it would be absurd that you've just gone from like a time when they didn't have the right to vote, and just a day after saying just because they had that right, it's all fine. But of course, that would be absurd. So it's a similar thing with the feminist movement, and of course the goals are going to change. Feminism isn't just some universal monolithic ideology. There's numerous different types of feminism, some good, some particularly rubbish, and the ones you should be focusing on are the ones that aim to, like you say, go for freedom and equality and the liberation of oppressive structures, and they very much do have a justification for existing, because you just got to look at the world today where people like Donald Trump and the Republicans can get into office and support really horrific stuff, like the idea that an abortion isn't something that anyone who can get pregnant can have access to, like the idea that women's health is something which isn't important, and just that women should just be abstinent from sex until they get married and stuff, which is something that many in government now believe. Just look at what the Republicans are trying to do to Planned Parenthood and stuff, and the access to women's health. It goes far beyond. You're having a very narrow-minded, center-streamed view of this, and ignoring the vast range of topics that exist, which show the need for feminism. Like, it goes beyond just I feel like you've taken your knowledge of it from some rubbishy like YouTube video where they've said like, "Oh, you can vote now, so you're equal," whereas like it's not anywhere near as simple as that. And like, believe me, it would be great if we didn't need to fight for all these things. But the fact that we have people who genuinely um, hold harmful, oppressive beliefs and have the power to enforce those beliefs shows we need to change. Like, I have personal anecdotes of friends and people I know who've had experiences which show that we do have deep problems with sexism in society.
Whenever you said about the whole abortion thing, there are some people in government, I'm not afraid to say that, there are some people in government who think abortion should not be given. Now, I don't think Trump is against it, but I could be wrong. But when it comes to abortion, at least in my beliefs, I believe women should be allowed to get an abortion. Like, let's say the woman's, life is at risk. Of course, give an abortion. If they were raped, of course, give an abortion. Or if the baby's going to have a horrific sort of birth defect, or is going to ruin either the babies, or both of their lives, or make it inherently worse. But I don't believe that abortion in general just needs to happen, because first of all, when it comes to abortion, sure, it's easy to get rid of that baby and it says my body and all that kind of thing. Yes, it is your body, but also there's the baby's body. The baby apparently doesn't have a right to speak, because, well, it can't. But it's still not necessarily their body 100%, because there's another body inside the body. Not only that, what about the man? Let's say the man is still with the woman, though the man still loves the woman and is still in the relationship with the woman. Does the man not have the right to talk about this issue and maybe have say into it. And not only that, when it comes to that sort of thing, you can just give. I understand childbirth does hurt. I'm not going to say that, but why not just give birth to the baby and put it up for adoption so that another family, let's say, who can't have a baby, can have a baby, take care of that child, and raise them to be an upstanding citizen. I don't get why getting the abortion is necessary when the woman doesn't want the baby.
So, can you not see the stuff you just said is pretty, gross? In terms of firstly the, just essentially the curtailment of bodily autonomy, really. I mean, it's just ignoring everything you said about women for a second. Imagine if you could get pregnant, and you had, a few cells in your body which would, in 9 months' time, be a human baby. But now it's just like some little microscopic organism, basically. No human life, no emotions, no any sort of substance. It's just some cells in your body, and you don't want to give birth, but then someone says, oh, actually, that thing's alive, so you're gonna have to go through with it. And your partner says, I want it to be born, so you're gonna have to go through with it. It doesn't matter whether you don't want something like that to happen to your body. They've decided for you. Is that fair?
It's not like forcing them to say that. I believe
No, in terms of
they are just cells. Don't get me wrong, but those cells are just so much more complex than that. And I understand it's not quite the body yet.
Sorry to interrupt you,
when it comes,
JJ. Sorry to interrupt you. But I was talking about that thought experiment. If it was you, if you were, if for some reason, you could get pregnant, if you were in that position, I mean, I'm assuming you don't want to be giving birth. Do you want to give birth? Is it something you want to do?
Honestly, when it comes to that sort of thing,
there
are ways to prevent
you.
There are ways to prevent the pregnancy, but
do you want
if
to?
I was,
like JJ,
what?
If you're in a situation where, for whatever reason, you've got a fetus inside you growing, it will eventually be a human body, human baby even, and do you want to give birth or have it, a cesarean, or essentially have?
I was getting to like I was reckless enough to get pregnant by, let's say, forgetting the man or forgetting to take my morning after pill or something like that. I believe that because I made a mistake, I should still, give birth, even though I would still have to give birth because I felt it was like a moral right to do it. Because if I wasn't raped, or the baby would be completely fine, or I'd be completely fine, or both of us would be completely fine. That, like I said, I feel like I should give birth to that baby, but give it up for adoption so that they could have a loving family. Because I wasn't ready to be a parent.
That's ridiculous, though. Why should you have to give up your bodily autonomy just because you got pregnant? Oh, that's what a disaster. That's not good. Why should or anyone who can get pregnant, lose their bodily autonomy based on a few cells in your body? It's not fair on you or the person who could get pregnant for someone else to say essentially assign life to some inanimate some cells, basically. Like what, like for all you can say, oh yeah, it will grow into a thing. It's obviously not biologically or emotionally a living thing. It's cells. It's not anything resembling human life, and it's nothing within a natural person. That person is fundamentally more important and more in control and fully able to decide what they want to happen to their own body with their life. And you can, it's all very well you sitting here and saying, oh well, if I was in a situation where I was irresponsible, which by the way I find quite gross that you suggest people,
or if there was an accident, like let's say the condom broke or something like that.
Yeah, but that's not exactly a good way of looking at things, is it? People should just be able to have control of their body regardless of what they do with it. It's gross to say that just because it didn't come through rape or anything, that it's justifiable to say you lose control of your own body. But going back to what I was saying, I refuse to believe that you would go through the pregnancy just because you had something growing inside of you, and it hadn't come through direct force upon you or something. I don't believe you would go through with it.
Personally, I would because,
You
well,
would.
first of all, I felt it was a more right. I had sex, I got pregnant, so and before you say they give up their moral autonomy, don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna force the women to give birth. I'm just saying, think about the just the what's gonna happen.
What's going to happen? Nothing. They're going to have the cells removed so that it won't grow
Just
into
think
a
about what.
baby.
Just think
What?
about. Just think about. Man, I'm starting to draw a blank on that. Oh boy.
But
Personally, I don't
what
think it's right, but I'm not going to force the woman to, not get the abortion. I'm just giving them a chance to think about what you think is right and
why does it matter
to
what
pick,
you think
hopefully,
is?
the choice that would go with me. Now, if you go ahead, but I just believe that getting rid of the baby is just,
It's
it's
not a
just not
baby.
really right, in my
It's not.
opinion.
It's not a baby though. It's like a handful of microscopic cells. It's nothing. It's maybe in 9 months' time it would be a baby, but abortions don't happen when it's like an actual human baby. They happen when it's like little microscopic cells, nothing that resembles human life, something which you might not even recognize if you just saw it in front of you. Like, it's not human, it's just some cells. And it certainly doesn't override the fact that the actual human, the person who carries those cells, has control of their own body and should be able to choose whether they get it or not, regardless of how it came to be. It doesn't matter whether it came through a rape or through, a broken condom, or just because they, thought they wanted to be pregnant but then changed their mind. It's their body and they have the right to choose. You know, that is fundamental. And for someone who earlier was talking about how capitalism is about freedom and about having the right to do whatever you want and having free speech, it's astounding that you would then have this opinion about abortion, because it's all very well you saying, oh, I wouldn't force it on anyone, but you still hold this view about the bodily autonomy of people who can get pregnant. Like, do you not sort of see that it's harmful holding that view? It's part of the reason why feminism is such a important thing, because it's all very well you saying this is just one person, but societally, lots of people hold your incorrect view about this, and many of those people are in government. And bringing us back to Trump a second, Trump has said some pretty horrific stuff about abortion, about a woman's right to get one. Um, so it's not like it's just an isolated thing. It's something which has real world consequences on the freedom of women and of people in general to have control over their own body. And if you're saying stuff about responsibility and how you should be punished for not being stuff, quote unquote, being responsible with your body and stuff, where does that stop? That leads to um that leads to people saying, "Oh, well, you shouldn't have sex at all if you're not married. You should just be abstinent," which again is also something Trump's administration are pushing, and Republicans in general have pushed for decades upon to American children, which is why sex education is so dismal in so many American schools, because Republicans literally don't want anything taught beyond "don't have sex till you're married." Hence, so many people have such terrible um, opinions and stuff about it.
I understand there's some people that have differing opinions, but you have to understand that how it is, just because one person has a different opinion doesn't mean it's going to go through and say, "Oh, you can't have an abortion." There are a lot of other things that will get in the way of that. First of all, human rights, and second of all, um, just rights in general. It's not like just because one person thinks that you shouldn't have an abortion doesn't mean that, of course,
It's not
abortions
just
are going to get banned.
it's not just one
People are going to
person though,
have
is it?
different opinions, and you have to. you don't have to agree with their opinions, but you have to learn to deal with their opinions and just move on with your day. It's not like it's gonna harm you just because they have a different opinion, because a lot of other people are gonna have an opinion different to theirs and will stop that from going through.
But yeah, that's not. Firstly, like you should want to, examine and analyze opinions that are clearly harmful and wrong. Like you'd want to be changing stuff that's harmful because it lessens people's life. People shouldn't have to go through life being needlessly judged and discriminated against for things that aren't negative. And secondly, it isn't just one or two people. Um, it's people, in a part of a massive social movement that has literally got people in government right now trying to curtail the rights of people to get abortions and have already succeeded in doing so in some degree because they've lowered funding for it. They've lowered the actual accessibility of it. You know, it's not like you can just say, oh, it's just, old man Bob in his like house saying, oh, I don't like those women getting abortions. And everyone just laughs and say, oh, that old man. It's a major thing in society, which people, across the board have unified opinions on. You yourself don't think that abortion is always, you know, it's not, you think it's a bad thing sometimes, which is, disgraceful in some, to some degree, because it's essentially saying, you don't agree with bodily autonomy when it suits your own, assigned version of morality. It has real world consequences. I mean, we're talking about sexism earlier. What do you think happens to, women in social circles where, they hold opinions like yours, where abortion is supposedly immoral because you're quote unquote killing babies? What do you think literally happens at abortion centers, caused by people who hold your opinion, where literally they get bombed because they're supposedly, killing babies, or murder centers, and people who supposedly, weren't affected by these negative opinions get killed by people who don't think bodily autonomy is, the right of a person, and instead have these, awful opinions about abortion. What of, the consequence of this view, which is that sex education ends up being don't have sex, just be, have abstinence, don't have sex till you're married, which is, so obviously rubbish and harmful in so many different ways. um but ends up being the next step after, you condemn abortion as something that's uh irresponsible and stuff, and should just be, should just be gone through with and stuff. You got to think about the actual real world consequences of your ideals and beliefs, and you can't just say, oh, it's just an opinion, because it has actual consequence, like for instance fascists in government trying to curtail the bodily autonomy of people who can have abortions. It's all very well having this sort of libertarian, oh, just live and let live, nothing's going to come from it, it's just an opinion, but that just doesn't apply to the real world.
You can't necessarily force someone's opinion. You can only change yourself. You can't change somebody else. And of course, if you try to force someone, that's against, well, a person's rights. They have the right to have different opinions. Now, don't get me wrong, bullying the person into agreeing with your beliefs, I think that's wrong. Let the person have a different opinion. Like, let's say I believe in gun control and you don't. Let's just say hypothetically. But why can't we just agree to disagree and move on rather than having a huge argument and bully the other person into believing what you think is right?
Because that approach is right if it's like, oh, what's your favorite film, what's your favorite snack. It's all right if it's something that just doesn't really matter. But when it's something as, important as bodily autonomy, the right to control your own body and decide whether you want something done to it or not, that's when it becomes, really crucial to have societal consensus on it. It's dangerous for us to have bodies of people in society who don't agree with abortion, because it culminates in bodily autonomy being curtailed and limited. It, results in religious fanatics bombing abortion centers, like we see in America, and quite regularly. In fact, it's, literally dangerous for some women to go to them because they're worried of the consequences that will happen if they do. Look at the social ostracization that women get in some circles if they do follow through with an abortion. Birth control is sadly still seen as a stigma in many families because of, people in government, for instance, pushing conservative, harmful opinions about this sort of stuff. It's all very well, saying, "Oh, why can't people just get along?" But it ignores the, real world consequences of said opinions. And sometimes no, you got to take a stand for what's right, and you got to say this is not acceptable to hold this opinion. It's like you can't just pretend people people's views on stuff don't have any societal consequences. It's all right saying that when you're not in a position to be affected by these things, when you're flush with, privilege, like you're cis, you're white, you're straight, you're male, like when you got all those things going for you in your favor in terms of like societal privilege, it's all right saying, oh, it's just opinions, because you're not going to hear any that necessarily like, have any threat to you or have any a stigma to you. But if you're, a woman and having your bodily autonomy scrutinized and demonized, if you're black and you got all these stereotypes and the risk from the police being hired, if you're LGBTQ and you're seen as an aberration or an abomination by many people, these opinions are more than just that. And that's ultimately where, these social movements have their justification. The need to destroy oppressive structures far outweighs the idea that you can just sort of sit around on your laurels and say, oh, well, it's just an opinion.
I don't get what's so bad about someone having a different opinion, It's just, you can't necessarily force someone to do something without getting into legal issues. Like if you try to murder somebody for having a different opinion, of course you're going to get arrested for that. So I don't get what the problem is. I just don't see the problem. I mean, people are going to always have differing opinions when it comes to like economic and societal issues.
In regards to abortion, though, you clearly educate, about why it's not a bad thing for someone to have an abortion. And like I just said, if you let opinions about stuff stay unchallenged, you end up in societal problems. Like I said, where women often get attacked, either verbally or even physically, for seeking abortions, where abortion clinics get bombed because fanatics and deeply ideological conservatives can't stand the idea of people having bodily autonomy, and thus literally physically harm and even kill people trying to just get an abortion. For you to say, oh, I don't see why people can't just have opinions, opinions have real world consequences. Like, you got to actually say no, some things in society need challenging. And people aren't saying, oh, we need to murder anyone who's not for abortion. But what we are saying is, well, we need to oppose them more than we are doing at the moment, because clearly our sort of lackluster, liberal-esque, mediocre opposition to negative far right ideals about bodily autonomy have led to a system in which the far right have ascended to political power, where you got fascists in the U.S. government and administrative systems writing legislation to remove the right to abortion. So it's all very well you saying, oh, it's just an opinion, but that attitude has led to the opinion becoming a legal threat, literally removing the rights and seeking to remove even further rights on bodily autonomy. So do you see that whole mindset is deeply flawed and actually really harmful?
honestly, I don't really see it as the huge issue when it comes to other things that need to be focused on. I mean, people are always going to have a differing opinion. It's just a matter of the right people doing the right thing and not because there's only certain people that are going to bring it to that extreme. Most people, at least like 80% of people, are mentally right in the head and are going to do that. It's like saying with, I know I'm going to go a bit off topic, but with gun control.
Well,
taking away the guns is not going to stop bad people from doing bad things. There's only a certain amount of bad people that are going to, let's say, bomb an abortion clinic. You're never going to truly stop that because there's always going to be those crazies out there that are going to do that sort of thing. And
Well,
it's not necessarily one person who's not going to do something bad. Let's say they have a different opinion. Just because they do that doesn't mean they're going to go necessarily, bomb an abortion clinic. It's the ones that are crazy and the ones that aren't mentally right in the head that are going to do that sort of thing.
well, firstly, I wanted to say that there's no need to be ableist. You don't need to use stuff like mentally, challenged and stuff and crazy. We can move beyond sort of using ableist phrases like that. But secondly, and in more relation to what you were saying, it's you don't need everybody in society to enforce a fascist way of thinking, a bodily or a curtailment of bodily autonomy. It's all very well you saying, oh, people are for abortion now. In America right now, like I've said a few times now, the right to get an abortion is being curtailed. It's being made harder. There's literally legislation passing through right now seeking to eliminate the ability for a woman to get an abortion. That's literally demonstrative objective evidence that shows that what you're saying now, which is that opinions, we can't harm anything in real life, is fundamentally flawed, because it's right now going through the emotions of trying to eliminate the ability to get an abortion. So I would instead ask you to say, oh well, if I can demonstratively show you that I can figuratively show you that these methods aren't working. So you need to have a firmer approach, and live and let live with negative, harmful opinions is not good enough. So it's time to update our tactics. We got to have zero tolerance for this idea that bodily autonomy can be curtailed. And that starts with what I was saying right at the start, a movement like feminism, which breaks down the negative structures that are placed upon women and people in general.
When you said about curtailing and to try to change a person's opinion, you can't really do that without doing certain things unethically. And when you say about fascism, wouldn't that be a form of fascism where you are forcing someone to have a different political view, even though they don't necessarily agree with it?
Who's being forced to have a different political view?
When you said there was a zero tolerance,
Yeah,
that's the same.
We shouldn't tolerate curtailing bodily autonomy. We shouldn't tolerate the idea that you can just impose your own standards on other people's bodies. That's not how it's at all like fascism.
Maybe maybe I didn't understand you 100% on that one, but like I said, people are always going to have different views. It's just a matter of the people
But
that are,
what good is that view?
that
What
are not.
saying people are always going to be bad? What good does that achieve? That doesn't solve anything. So instead, let's go to a more productive view, which is, oh, we need to address this and focus on educating people about why abortion is just a normal thing that people should be able to access. Why it's a person's right to have control over their own body. Why breaking down negative stereotypes about abortion and sex and women in general, and then that's just improving things for everyone. Suddenly there's less stigma around sex and around birth control and health control and stuff. Suddenly you don't have all the pressure and misery lots of people go through when in relation to that. It benefits everyone to move beyond the bigotry and oh gosh, sorry. Move beyond the bigotries of the past. But the attitude that you and many others have of just nothing's going to change. You can't always just get rid of people's opinions, and you can't change people's opinions. It doesn't help anyone. It essentially allows these negative, harmful ideas to fester in society and thus culminate in what we're seeing now. Again, you seem to be glossing over the clear fault in society at the moment, with far right people in government seeking to curtail rights and stuff caused by a tolerance for their harmful opinions and stuff, amongst other things.
Hold on a second. I'm trying to gather up my thoughts.
No worries. If you wish, we can sort of wrap up the abortion section and move on.
Nah, I just need a second is all.
No worries, no worries. Thanks to everyone watching so far. Hope it's been all right. Looking at the chat now. Nice message. You thought of what you're going to say yet, JJ?
Yeah, I have to a certain extent. I understand that some opinions can manifest into harm. I do understand that, but it only happens to people that are naturally violent mentally. And before you say ableist, there are mental things that determine how people are. I mean, like for me, for instance, I have autism. There's only certain things that I can accept, but when it comes to that sort of thing, just because someone has a different opinion doesn't necessarily mean they're going to act upon it in a violent way or take away a person's right. They just have that opinions, and the ones that are responsible enough to not do that will just learn to accept that other people have a different opinion and move on. They may not necessarily agree with that person, but if they're responsible enough and don't have anything mentally different on them like that, they won't do something violent like bomb a abortion clinic or take away someone's human right.
Regarding the ableism thing, the whole point is that it's not just mental imbalances and disorders and stuff that cause this sort of thing. Like the fact you're autistic doesn't have any relation to the fact that you think abortion isn't justified in some circumstances. For instance, it's not like the fact that someone was depressed or suicidal was directly the cause of someone shooting up their school. It's you can't blame physical or mental disability on something bad that person did, when there's plenty of people who have physical or mental disabilities who would never dream of doing something like that, who are suffering in one way but then would never hurt and harm other people. It's that hence the the term ableist. But moving on, the whole is saying opinions don't harm people, and that it's you can't change people's minds. The tactic and the sort of methodology you have, as I've said numerous times now, and I think I want a more direct answer to, is it's not working. Like, what do you have to say for the fact that people in government right now are seeking to and have already partially succeeded in curtailing bodily autonomy? It's not good enough to tolerate harmful ideas when those harmful ideas perpetuate and normalize insidious views about society. So yeah, I'll ask you now directly. What is if this live and let live with harmful opinions was so successful? Why are we now seeing these far right people, these conservative traditionalists in government right now in America and in other countries too, seeking to oppose and curtail basic bodily autonomy?
I think I've said my piece on when it comes to this sort of thing.
No, but you haven't on this specific thing though. Why is if supposedly there's no harm in just letting all these opinions lie in society, why are we seeing Trump and his administration curtailing the right to get an abortion now? Because as you were saying earlier, it's not going to have any real world effects, but here we are with more and more pressure and anti legislation being placed against abortion and stuff. So why has that happened?
I don't necessarily know specifically, but
so
there are a lot of other people that don't necessarily agree with the president, and
what good
the
is
government
that,
works for the people by the people. So if
But
somebody doesn't necessarily agree with that, they can vote against it, and
you've just
it will
contradicted
be
that
null and void.
you just contradicted that statement within the same sentence. The government is for the people by the people, but then at the same time, the people don't agree with the government who are passing the laws right now. And it's a long way away till 2020. 9 months can be fit twice into that time period. If you get pregnant, and it doesn't matter that if someone says, "Oh, in 2020 we can vote them out," because all of a sudden, you're going to be giving birth by then. Secondly, there's no guarantee that an election will vote out these people. That's leaving it to chance, basically. And even if this were to pass, that still doesn't change that they got rid of the right and made it harder to seek bodily autonomy in the form of abortion in that time period, which shows again that this live and let live libertarian attitude towards it really hasn't worked. So I would again, sort of insist that you look beyond just allowing these harmful opinions to just fester in society and saying, no, we need to take a more active stance in deconstructing negative views about bodily autonomy, about women, about abortion and stuff, about sex, and we'll have a better society as a result of that.
Whenever you said about going back to what you said a little bit about sex ed and that sort of thing. Personally, in my school, they what?
No, you go ahead. Sorry, I didn't think you. I thought you would finish.
It's all right.
All right. Well, all I was saying about sex education was that because of the conservative sort of
don't
approach,
have sex, that sort of thing.
Abstinence. It's a terrible way of teaching sex ed, harmful. Not only to actual knowledge, but also just in terms of the
I do agree with you on that.
Exactly, but can you
personally, I do understand.
That,
I do understand that, and I do kind of agree with that. But personally, in my school, this is just personally when it comes to this, and may not go with other schools. But personally, whenever I learned about sex ed, we did learn about Now, sure, we did learn about abstinence, the only true 100% way of not getting pregnant. But we also learned about contraceptives, the pill, condoms, diaphragms, that sort of thing. But they did say that you probably should wait, but it's up to you. They didn't force that thing on you. They just said just be prepared just in case it does happen, and just try your best to avoid that pregnancy.
Yes.
Now, sure, there are there are some schools that necessarily do that, and they need to teach them that. But I know of a lot of schools that are teaching the way my school has been doing it, which is teaching about contraceptives, that sort of thing, other than just abstinence.
Yeah. And as I've said already, the people in government right now are seeking to limit and remove that and lower it even further. Yeah. So again, it's all connected. The ideas around sexual autonomy, the freedom to do with your body what you wish, is something that's lost to conservative right wing ideology, basically. And hence what I'm saying about you need to have more prescient opposition to these topics, because if you don't actively oppose fascists and those who seek to oppose bodily autonomy, you allow them to eventually reach a position where they can actually seize power and start imposing their opinions upon the populace. So for all you can say, oh, most people are on board with abortion, it doesn't matter, because you've then ended up with a situation where, despite that, abortion can't be attained by more people, and if they have their way, eventually anyone. Oh gosh, my voice is starting to go, so I feel like we should be sort of heading to a conclusion of sorts.
Yeah. All right.
But you wanted to say anything more?
If you want to move on to something else, like something shorter, then we can wrap up. That's fine by me.
All right, yeah, sure. A topic to sort of draw us to a close on, of sorts, or just a shorter topic to discuss.
Do you think gun control would be a good thing to talk about, or do you think that'd be a little too long?
Maybe not gun control right now. Maybe perhaps I'm not too sure actually. Maybe we should just end it now and save it for a another time.
Okay, that's fine by me.
Well, I suppose I should say thank you, JJ, for coming on at rather short notice. I should add. It's been interesting conversing with you.
That's fine. Same with you.
No,
And
definitely.
I'm glad to have had this discussion with you, even though we don't necessarily agree on some things, but we do agree on some things, and I kind of
Mhm.
like that.
I hope you heed what I've said. Listen to just the ideals and stuff and the critiques I was making, because I feel as though you're not too far away from seeing eye to eye with me on some stuff. Just got to perhaps consider what I'm saying more, which sounds a little bit arrogant, I suppose, but just
Hmm.
keep your eyes open, I suppose. Anyhow, thank you for
Uh,
joining me, JJ, and thank you to everyone who tuned in, and especially the ones who left nice comments in the chat, because it warms my heart seeing little love hearts by my name and stuff. Anyhow, thanks everyone for watching. Thank you for JJ for joining me today, and until next time.